Good afternoon and good evening. Those of you in the outfield bleachers, including Mary Norris, if you just, I know you have trouble telling time. If you just come a little bit closer so you won't feel ostracized. If you can come a little bit closer. Welcome to the SCI-Arc graduation, 2011. Friends, colleagues, parents, grandparents, and some students. It's great to have you here. I was just talking to our speaker, who you'll hear from in a moment, an hour or so ago about the fact that today is, of course, 9/11. It's a difficult subject to discuss. It's an impossible subject to omit. It strikes me that there's a lineage, and it probably is worth mentioning, there's a lineage that goes back 1,400 years or so. From the 8th century, the Battle of Tours, Saladin, Richard the Lionhearted. I don't mean this to be a history lesson for all of the things you forgot, but in the chronology of the West and a confrontation with Islam, Suleiman at the gates of Vienna, and Osama bin Laden at the World Trade Center. And I think we would probably all agree, whatever differences of opinion we have about that event and about the 10 years that have followed it, that it's a complicated time, in some ways a confusing time, a difficult time, but in a sense, a perfect time for us, a perfect time for SCI-Arc. And I only say that because I think, and I think you're believers in this too, that SCI-Arc prepares students to negotiate under unusual circumstances with special opportunities. And I think it's important in the end to see this as an extremely optimistic and positive event. And I don't mean that as a sort of adolescent cheerleader, you know, rah. But that unusual times, complicated circumstances, difficult conditions are in many ways fundamentally what we talk to with students. There are always cracks. There are always exceptions. And SCI-Arc has a way of getting into the cracks, and out of that something new grows. So I did want to say a word about 9/11. Second point, which I think going forward and going backward, we called it recollecting forward. SCI-Arc owns the building over here. Last year when we did this event, the prospects were in the offing. It was possible that we'd be able to buy the building. I think when you look at a small, inconspicuous, obscure, nondescript Bedouin school, when I say Bedouin or renegade, don't be offended by all of that, but a school that in some ways for many years lived by its wits, moved from place to place, and we argued that that was actually a virtue. So while all the institutional members of the architectural establishment had buildings and funds and scholarships and a ubiquitous presence on the big board, SCI-Arc was going from semester to semester and year to year inventing architecture, but very tenuous in terms of its long-term prospects. And I think the fact that we've converted that condition, we now own the building, we now own this site, and I think the issue for us going forward, and it really belongs not so much to me, but I think to the faculty you see here, which is a wonderful collection, maybe the best collection ever anywhere, of young, unusual, critical thinking, optimistic, creative, imaginative characters. So this is either a great thing or a little bit dangerous. If they don't kill each other off in the next 10 years or so, I think the school has a chance to be very remarkable, in keeping, in a sense, with its tradition of non-tradition. But it does have a firmness now. It has a foundation now. We're not going anywhere else. That doesn't guarantee the content or the pedagogy. That still we have to maintain. And I think we actually maintain that. This is a hypothesis for you. You can consider this, but I think you maintain what SCI-Arc has, its audaciousness, by doing the opposite of what your psychiatrist always tells you to do. Because your psychiatrist probably, especially your psychiatrist, tells you, get rid of the tension, get rid of the stress. And I think in a constructive way, what works for SCI-Arc and what will continue to work is this kind of tension, a tension between ideas, between personalities, between design possibilities. I think if we maintain that, notwithstanding the firmness and the foundation and the financial commitment that we've made and can clearly sustain, then I think the school will continue in a very strong way, in a positive way, and a constructive way into the future. Next topic is, as we always do, we have a salubrious and distinguished speaker, and today is no exception. The speaker today is Tom Main, and I just was thinking, I forgot to mention this to him, but we had a discussion a few months ago. He has a son by the name of Cooper who goes to a very unusual school in Arizona where they actually read book upon book and so on, as antiquated as that may appear to some people. And one of the recent assignments was to read Cervantes' novel, some of you may know, Don Quixote. And in Don Quixote, this is again neither a history lesson nor a literary seminar, but just to remind you, there are two key characters in Don Quixote. One is Sancho Panza, who rides the donkey, is the squire, and is the sort of pragmatic fellow. And the other one is Don Quixote, who thinks it's a giant and a monster, but it's actually a windmill. Or is it? So this is really the question. Is it Sancho's vision, or is it Don Quixote's vision? And I think in one way or another, Tom may give you an answer to that question. Please welcome Tom Main.